Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan here with the Rocks and Stocks News website. I've got another in my series of interviews that I do with company executives. Today, I have one of my favorite interviews. It's with Tim Froude. Not only is Tim's company, Sokoman, a sponsor of my website, but I really like talking to him because he's a old school explorationist. And he does a wonderful job of explaining things in a way that investors can understand too. So Tim, thank you very much for joining me today.
Always a pleasure, Allan.
Another reason I always like talking to you, Tim, is you always got something on the go. And one of the things that I have been very excited about is your barge drilling. In your recent news release, you announced some high-grade hits, but you also included a map that's a plan view. And I think people, by looking at that, they can see sort of the challenges you had from drilling from the sides. And now you're right on top of it, and you're able to access that quite a bit better. So let's get right into talking about those recent results.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point. I mean, we've been talking about the barge-based program for some time now, and although we did have a couple of brief, if you will, interludes with ice-based programs in the past, winters just haven't been reliable enough, and just frankly, last year was a total write-off in terms of trying to get out on the lake there or the pond, and yeah, so it just became quite obvious that we just needed to bite the bullet and fork out the dough for a barge. Now we don't own the barge, but obviously we're paying for it, so you know what I mean. And just get right at her. And because you mentioned, drilling from one side, drilling from the west side of the pond, you're essentially drilling down dip, and you run the risk of either passing over the top of it or underneath it. And from the other side, it's too far away. You pass under the zone, under the plunge of the zone. So now,
and it's a long reach too. You got to drill a long angled hole to get to it.
Yeah, that's right. And now, there are some possibilities maybe, and just so you know, although we haven't made this public, it's not a big deal. Well, it may be a big deal. We just finished doing a CSAMT survey, which is basically kind of like a controlled source EM system or IP. To help us look for links, maybe things are joining together down around, below 1,000 meters. And so once we get it just finished, like in the last couple of days, so we just beat winter out.
Well, that really excites me, Tim.
Yeah. So once we get all that interpreted, and merged with our current database, it'll give us a better opportunity to target things a bit deeper. I know people have been sort of egging us on to do that for some time now, but listen, when you can drill at 30 meters down the hole visible gold, I kind of like doing that, and yeah, it's fun to wing one down occasionally and see what you get, but the risk reward on those are pretty high. So I prefer the well, call me a wimp, 30-meter drill hole with visible gold. I'll take that.
Well, let's talk about that. 4.95 meters at 27 grams. So you're talking about an ounce there. 4 meters of 14 grams within 9 meters of 6.65. So anywhere from a quarter to a half an ounce per ton. And that wasn't an isolated incident. You had some other attractive looking gram meter intersections starting at like 30, 40, 50 meters.
Yes, yeah. And you know what? The grades are they're they're what we expect to get in a nuggety system. A bit of everything, really, Allan. And you bring that point up, and I'm glad you did, because not every hole. Yes, we may be in a nuggety high grade system, but it doesn't mean that every hole is going to give you the bonanza grades. We do have visible gold in nearly all those intersections, and sometimes there's just a couple of small specks, sometimes there's a couple of bigger specks. So you take what you get, and the fact that we're seeing visible gold tells us we're in the right system. It's just that maybe a meter to the left or a meter to the right, there's a multi-ounce assay waiting there. But you know, I'm just happy to see gold, and you know what, the grades will all work out. And don't forget, when it comes time to do a 43-101, we all face the guillotine, to bring up something pretty disgusting. But anyway, all the grades are going to be cut anyway. So what we're getting now is probably more likely what's going to be an average grade, say. And I don't know, but I'm just assuming, because like I said, that's what QPs do, and they do these things. So it's nice to get those big flashy numbers. And I think right now we see our neighbor to the east of us having some issues with duplication. But again, it's nugget effect. And
Well, and you know, that brings up an important point as well, Tim. Not only are you talking about being able to miss it just on a meter range, sometimes just even in the drill core, depending on what piece goes off to the lab, you could have half of the drill core that's sitting at the at your facility, and it could have you know, great grades as well. But due to the way you cut the core and you send this side off and that side goes to storage, you know, you could have an unlucky cut.
well, exactly. I mean, it's impossible to cut a round piece of core that's got nuggets of gold in it exactly down. Well, I'm going to say the middle. I mean, you're always going to cut it down the middle, but with exactly the same amount of gold on either side of that saw blade, or if you're splitting it, you know, hand splitting it with a hydraulic splitter, it's impossible. So, you know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and that's just the way it is, and that's the way it's always been. So one thing I will say though about that is that I'm all in favor of sampling the entire core. Yes, it beats it up and stuff like that, and you know, down the road, if you wanted to go back and verify, you know, the vein, you know, was there a vein there after all? I mean, thanks to 43-101 for that. But you know, I'm all for the whole core thing. At a couple of labs, crush the whole thing up, make it 2 equal splits, then do your metallic sieves and your assays on that, and compare what you get then. And I'm sure everyone will be much happier with that result. So I'm all for that.
I'm
But currently now,
I'm
and
100% behind you on that, Tim. My experience in exploration for diamonds, you know, understanding representative grades, when you're talking about a tiny little diamond, you know, you can be off just slightly and miss that diamond, not just in the core itself, but in the block of a meter. You know, if the gold or the diamond is over here and you drill here a little hole, you're not really getting a representative grade. At least the entire core is more representative.
well, exactly, and even then, you still have to be somewhat careful, because all labs have their own QA, QC, and procedures with respect to the various assay methods. And you know, like Eastern, for instance, the lab that we use, and you know, we'll continue to use, they pulverize the entire sample. If you send in 2 kilograms, they pulverize the 2 kilograms. You send in 5 kilograms in one sample bag. I don't do that generally, but because they're too big. But anyway, whatever, they pulverize 100% of that sample. I think some of the labs that we've heard reference to lately don't even pulverize the entire sample. So how's that even comparing apples to apples? So, and different size mesh screens. I mean, it's all, you know, all this stuff adds up to, you know, but I think in the end, it'll all circle back to, you know, we're dealing with a metal that likes to occur in nuggets, and that's going to be a problem for duplicating assay results forever.
But in these kind of systems, that's a good problem. Just like it's a good problem to have complex faulting. That's the nature of orogenic gold vein systems.
Yes.
The main thing is you've got high grade gold and you've got the structural story. And you guys definitely have that. In fact, I got to ask you something, Tim. When that image you show in your last press release, it looks to me like on the side where the barge is, there's in the lake, there's two faults. Am I seeing things correctly?
Yes, well, we know for certain that the main eastern trend structure, as well as the footwall splay structure, both are, partly under the lake. They do come to surface along what appears to be along the shoreline there, but we haven't been able to see it because, of course, you can't trench, on the shoreline of a pond or a lake or a river. It's just not done anymore, and that's fine. I have no issue with that. But yeah, you're right. There are multiple structures. So what we're seeing basically is like the feathering out of a master structure that as it comes closer to surface, whether it's the lithostatic load has come off and it just sort of cracks, more frequently. But yeah, there are definitely multiple structures there.
Well, and that's important because in these orogenic kind of systems, you've got the big fault, the big structure that taps way down into the through the crust, and then you've got these secondary structures that are oftentimes what actually plumbs the system to bring the fluids up.
Yeah, and if you look at a cross section through Fosterville, and I know that in the past, and even the technical, you pull up the most recent technical report on Fosterville, you'll see that. You'll see those sediments tightly folded with these chevron type folds, these tight V's and W's and things like that. And you'll see splays cross-cutting that. It's just a mishmash, and that's just what happens when you're trying to compress something into a space that's not there. Something's got to give. So, and that's where you get the sliding. And of course, these are where the fluid paths start to develop, and that's where you get your veins coming along these slide paths.
So I guess the big structure is probably the main plumbing system, but then once it gets closer to surface, it's got those secondary faults that it can start pumping into as well.
That's right, and once those fluids reach the point whereby they actually start to precipitate out and become solid rock, because as we all know, at depth these things are all fluids, right? I mean, it's hard to imagine a quartz vein being a fluid thing at one time, but it's true. And of course, with all these little gobs of beautiful stuff sitting in it, how was it was described when Benny Hollinger slid on the Moss and Timmins, and he said the gold hung like candle drippings, on the quartz vein. I mean, I know, you get goosebumps just thinking about that. And
exactly.
And again, I'll use that reference. I think, with what's happening in central Newfoundland reminds me of where Timmins was, 100 years ago.
Well, and for a long time, it certainly didn't get enough exploration. And I think part of the reason is that, sometimes a junior drills into something and hey, it looks good. But when you're in these complex faulting systems, it's not easy to trace that. So people can lose their attention quickly. And now that, people are starting to understand the orogenic vein system model and a lot of dollars being available to explore those correctly, that's why Newfoundland is now one of the hottest places in Canada to be looking, and you guys have been in there for a long time.
Yeah, and certainly because of our complex geological past, we've got a hell of a lot of structure to unravel, and it's not just one fault. I mean, our Fleur de Lis project, for instance, sits astride what's called the Bayvert-Brompton line, and it's a major crustal break that extends all the way down through eastern Canada and across the pond over to the UK. And it's the same system that has the Dalradian stuff associated with it, right? So that's one. And then you come further east and you've got the Red Indian line, and then you come further east and you've got the Valentine Lake Cape Ray shear zone, the one that we're on. Then you go further east again and you've got the Dog Bay line that Newfound and others are on. And there's still, there's multiple. And
these are crustal features that go deep down towards the upper mantle.
Yep, where you need to be to tap those good gold-bearing fluids.
So as a Newfoundland guy and now seeing proper exploration being done in the mining business of gold especially, it's got to have you feeling pretty warm and fuzzy about your home territory there.
Yeah, well, hopefully there will be a lot of new head frames popping up as a result of that, or open pits. I'll take either one. But yeah, it is nice to have the spotlight on our part of the world. Clearly, it's created some logistical issues, as we now know, with personnel, drill availability, B, and of course the big elephant in the room, the labs and things like that. And of course, I don't know if you know this, but Eastern, the lab that we use and all the local companies here use, was just shut down for 4 days with a COVID scare. So, just another minor hiccup in a string of hiccups, but they're doing their best.
Tim, sometimes I think that the market gets too wrapped up in the next news release. And here you're looking for, or let's look at Fosterville, for example. 20 years of mine production before they found the Swan Zone. That was a revolutionary project for Kirkland Lake. These things aren't easy, folks. And you got to look at the big picture, faulting, the structural story. Do you have that complex faulting? Do you have that high grade gold in the system? These are what you're looking for. And if it takes 6 months to a year to 2 years to 3 years to find something that is a mine, that's a company making thing. So you can't just be looking at, well, when's your next news release? When's your next news release? That sort of drives me crazy in this business, is that people spend too much time looking at the next catalyst instead of looking at the big picture of what you're looking for.
Yes, exactly. And it's not just one example, like the one that we like to use here, because the similarities are so striking, is Fosterville. But look at Red Lake. I mean, the Red Lake mine that Goldcorp ended up mining. Jesus, that was the highest grade underground gold mine in the world, based on that.
And there had been what, 50 years of production there before they found that high grade.
Yeah, yeah, and wasn't it a competition that he put online or something that ended up finding it?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Anyway,
and that made Goldcorp, until they diversified into lower grade production, until that point, that made them the lowest cost producer in the gold mining business. That's what we're looking for here, folks.
Yes, and
super high grade, low cost underground mines that make companies.
Yes, exactly. So, but getting back to our news of the week there, clearly we were very pleased to get the first few holes out. We would, and if we had more, we would have put more out, but that's all we had. And there's still a few samples remaining for most of those holes that are targeting other structures further down. But the bulk of the assays are out for those, and nothing should really change. But there's still assays outstanding for some of those holes, and of course we've got 15 or more holes from there that are in either a logging procedure now or have been sampled, and samples are in the lab. But it's we're building the beast. We're working from and that hole you mentioned, the 4.95 meters right there. We almost hit the intersection point where the footwall splay and the eastern trend come together, because if you look at the includings and the ands in that table, you'll see there were two high-grade intercepts. One was the footwall splay, and the upper one would have been, because we're drilling it from east to west, the upper intersection would have been the eastern trend, followed with, like, just a couple of meters away. So we almost hit the perfect intersection point of where the footwall and the eastern trend come together. So just a little fact for you there, by the way.
Talking about perfect preparation of the rock.
Yes, right. You get two gold-bearing structures coming together. They generally have babies, right? So anyway, big ones. Well, so anyway, just to continue with that press release, we're working our way south, and of course, ongoing drilling at the 75 zone that we talked about briefly before we came on. We're working our way north. So we're closing that gap. And I want to make this one continuous deposit, not 5 or 4 or whatever zones we have there now. So that's the mission. And if people still question why we're still drilling all these shallow holes, well, because we can, and because we're still getting VG. I don't get tired, as I mentioned, of drilling 30, 40, 50 meter holes. They give me gold that I can
At
see
surface,
and
pretty
touch.
So
So
what's between the 75 zone and that barge? What's the distance in there between those?
it's depending on what hole you measure it from. It's I think it's about 125, maybe 150 meters. So that's pretty good. That's the entire strike length of the Swan Zone.
That's where my question was going.
So there you go. You know, never say never. And if you look at our corporate presentation, you'll see one of the slides that shows, I think, the 2021 drilling. It shows all the proposed holes. You'll see there's still some pretty open and obvious gaps in drilling that we need to patch in. So, and we also announced, I'm very proud to say, pleased to say, we've doubled the 50,000 meter phase 6 to 100,000 meters. Yeah, come on with it. I mean, what did people expect us to
Tim,
go back to a 2,000 meter program? Not a chance.
I give
So,
you I give you permission to just call it ongoing drilling.
You know what? I think, yeah, we'll shorten the press releases up with by cutting 2 words out of it. Phase 6. And now it's going to be the ongoing
Perfect.
drilling program. Because, and listen, I mean, we have 4 drills. We got to keep them busy. So, well, one was down the Grey River for a little while, and there will be some news coming out shortly on that. Not assay news.
I want to
not
get
yet.
into that, but before we do, you're drilling a pretty good fence line over a couple hundred meters, and that mineralization, and you're learning about the faulting, and now you've done some geophysics that can help you target deeper. People may complain about that near surface drilling and finding high grade gold. I don't really understand it, but that helps you target deeper, and you don't want to just bang a hole in there deeper until you understand how this is acting at that 200 meter strike, so that you have something to follow deeper. Is that a good point?
Well, I mean, nature being what it is, and we've seen this already a few times, and not just on this project, but any structurally controlled or structurally complex project I've been on. How do you know that 25 meters along trend from where you last drilled a hole, there isn't a major frickin' fault there chopping things off? And you set up then to drill a deep hole in that gap that you haven't got any information in, and you miss everything because you didn't continue with the plan? Shame on me.
You got a great point there, Tim. You got to understand that faulting and the mineralizing system in order to chase it deeper. But now you're doing some work that will lead you deeper. And I think that's what really has me the most excited, Tim, is in these high grade systems, you want to look for that continuity, especially at depth. We talked about the Red Lake. They had to go down 1,000 meters before they found the jewelry boxes. And doing what you're doing is the work required to be able to go deeper.
Yes. Now, I won't complain if the jewelry box is at 250 meters either, but, and we could still find that by continuing with the plan for now. So, so yeah, I mean, you're right. There are lots of goodies. So, Grey River, we just finished. I was down there for 90% of that program. We had some weather issues. We didn't get the 2,000 meters drilled because we lost approximately half of our shifts due to weather, mostly wind.
So, where is Grey River in relation to Moosehead?
It's right on the southern coast of Newfoundland. So it's a couple of 100 kilometers almost due south, a bit southwest maybe of Moosehead. It's on the coast, so it's accessible by boat. There's no road there, but the fact that you can park a boat there, the cheapest, the most efficient way to get stuff moved
Well,
around on the
park a
planet.
boat there, get off the boat, and you see veins.
Yes, and there is a town there. There is a small town of Grey River is there, and it has a little bit of a mining past. In fact, in the late 1950s, ASARCO, or most people would know American Smelting and Refining Company, they're no longer with us. They got taken out by, I think, a Mexican-based company. But anyway, they sunk an adit, or they tunneled an adit 2.5 kilometers into the hill behind the town, chasing high-grade tungsten veins. And yeah, a lot of people don't know that. There's a big pile of tungsten sitting down there. 500 meters to the west of that, there's a porphyry moly copper deposit sitting there with high-grade gold veins squirting off the edges of it. That's currently on Crown land and will be probably subject to a call for bids or proposals for it. So this is a very mineral-rich part of Newfoundland. And what we were chasing was what I call a pogo lookalike. And for those that don't know pogo is a very high-grade, lucrative mine in Alaska, mined by I think it's Northern Star Mining. It's a 10 million ounce gold deposit, past production and reserves of about 14 grams per ton. And it's associated with these odd, humongous silica bodies within these high-grade metamorphic terrain. That's Grey River to a T. And it was never really the focus of aggressive gold exploration. It was drilled. I think there was 20 holes put in by the government of Newfoundland in 1968, testing the silica potential. So there's a potential silica deposit here that just happened to have around the edges of it up to 135 or 225 historically grams per ton gold in surface samples. So we staked it as part of the joint venture alliance with Benton and said, let's be the first to drill holes down there focused on gold. So
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, you guys shared some pictures of the outcropping veins.
yes,
Is that the project?
yes, it is. Yeah. And yeah, they're huge. Like this body, you can
Yeah,
see it.
they're not little narrow things. They're wide. Even I could find those.
Well, 300 meters, in places. And now there's slivers of country rock and everything caught up in that. But there's, I think, 8 kilometers in strike lengths with gold mineralization dotted along it. A lot of it is low grade, less than a gram, but we have seen visible gold there as well. So it's worth a shot. And we've got 5 holes drilled. All samples are currently in the lab. So we'll expect to see those probably by the end of the year, if not early 2022. There's not much else we can do down there right now anyway. And it's not the place you want to be in the wintertime. It's probably friendlier in terms of climatic conditions to drill on the North Pole of Mars than it would be at Grey River in the wintertime. But now, having said that, it's not that horrific. It's actually a beautiful piece of the world, and yeah, it's fairly well endowed with lots of metal. So
So in addition to that, you guys aren't just Moosehead and this Grey River, you've also been getting into lithium as well. So you're really rolling up your sleeves on all. I mean, I'm very bullish on lithium. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people bullish on that. So where does things stand with your lithium efforts?
Okay, disclaimer time. Possible forward-looking statements coming on lithium. Yeah, well, funny things happen when you send good prospectors out in the field with rock hammers. They don't just look for gold; they look for everything. And we just happen to be down.
Boys, they're good prospectors.
And I happened to be there that day. I mean, we were all there that day. We found these things, and we were looking at them, saying, geez, this looks kind of odd. Maybe we should assay them for lithium, because we could see what looked like crystals. Now, we didn't actually see the really best stuff until the second visit, and I think we have that picture in one of the slides in our presentation. But and then the results come back, over 2% Li2O. Woohoo! So good things happen when you explore. So yes, we're a goal focused company, but what do people expect us to do? Throw this stuff over our shoulder and continue on looking for gold? I actually had people email me about that, saying, looks like you've lost your focus. Like, come
Well,
on,
tell
like,
them
get a
this.
life.
Tell them this story. One of my mentors is Andre Goumand, and Andre found the Eleanor deposit in Quebec. They got bought out by Gold Corp. They spun all of their other projects into a new company that got bought out. They spun all the exploration projects out that got bought out 3 times.
Yes, yeah. So
So
again,
being an exploration company with multiple projects is not a problem. You've got the potential to spin things out, create another company for the shareholders, have success with that company. That's one of my favorite models.
okay, so this is the moment where I say forward-looking statement, and everybody should lean into their screens a little bit closer just to hear what I'm going to say. Yeah, you said spin out. We don't want this to be a distraction to our focus of gold, and so it just makes sense. It's the only way really we'll probably appreciate any real value, certainly in the early days from this, is to spin it out. Now, we haven't done anything formally with respect to that yet, Allan, but it is on the topic for our next board meeting, and that'll be soon. So there could be, at least an update on the lithium in terms of what our opportunities are. We are getting calls from groups, dedicated to the lithium space as well, who want the property, but I'm not sure that optioning it out is going to really maximize our value either. So I'd like to keep it all to ourselves and our shareholders and do a spin co, dish a portion of it off to our very patient and outstandingly wonderful shareholders, and raise a bit of money on the rest of it and drill until the cows come home.
Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to sort of figure out that forward-looking possibility. Moosehead to me is a company maker, standalone company maker. So, but you guys are good at exploration, and you're partnered up with the Stairs family, which are very talented prospectors and exploration guys. And so why not look at everything else in a new company and keep Moosehead, Sokoman focused on Moosehead, and then build up these other assets? It's the same model that Andre Goumand used.
Yeah, and just like Fleur de Lis, I mean, that's a district scale project as well that we announced probably 6 or 8 weeks ago. The first batch of results from overburden drilling management's analysis of the till samples. We have over 100 anomalous samples, so basically a quarter of our samples are anomalous in terms of the number of gold grains, and they've determined that at Fleur de Lis, background is about 10 gold grains per sample, and these are 10 to 15 kilograms of material. So in 25 to 30 pounds, 10 grains of gold will be considered background. So they consider an anomaly 2 times background or more. So if there's 20 grains in it, then suddenly it makes the anomaly list. And we've got 100 of those that have.
What do those grains look like? Are they rounded? Are they angles to them? What do they look?
All of the above. When they pull those gold grains, they pluck everyone out using binocular microscopes. They're generally small, like sub-millimeter size, and they'll describe each one, and they'll report the results as total grains. They'll have rounded grains, modified grains, and pristine grains. So the pristine grains are the ones that have traveled, according to their guidelines, less than 200 meters. And we've got some of our highest grain counts in total grains also equate to the highest numbers of pristine grains, suggesting the source for that gold is on the Fleur de Lis property.
And did you use ODM for that?
All of it. Yes, it's
Yeah.
totally in their hands. Basically, they're managing it for us. I mean, we pay the bills. We did throw a couple of guys at them at the start to get the thing underway, and yeah, so it's not a distraction to us. It's going along very nicely. We should have by the end of next week all of phase one samples collected. I think 950 or so samples, and it'll take a little time to get all the results back, but that's fine. You know, winter's coming soon, so
Well,
it's time.
Tim, now you've piqued my excitement again. You know, I spent a lot of my career in diamond exploration. That's why I guessed that you used ODM. ODM did a lot of the indicator mineral recovery for the diamond indicator minerals in the Canadian diamond exploration scene. These guys are very talented. And just like in diamonds, you know, the indicator minerals you're looking for, if they're rounded, it suggests that the glacier moved them a long distance. If they're angular, in this case, you would call them pristine gold grains, they're 100, 200 meters from the source. And there's two things you want to look for: the surface textures of the indicator minerals in diamonds, surface texture in gold grains. The other thing is counts. If you have a high count of diamond indicator minerals, or in this case, a high count of of pristine gold grains, that tells you two things. It tells you, yes, you're close to the system. Secondly, it tells you that you're probably close to a high grade system.
Yeah, so in harmony with that, we have also been doing some prospecting. These guys are really keen. It's amazing. They're mules. They work like dogs, and I really owe them a debt of gratitude. They may get a little reward come Christmas time, a bit of a bonus, but they certainly earned it. But yeah, and we're seeing some very nice rock samples that they managed to squeeze into their backpacks alongside these heavy till samples. So now we haven't been rushing those rocks because, like I said, we don't want to be in competition with ourselves for space. Obviously, Moosehead being the flagship will always get priority for us, unless there's a really, just a stunning discovery made. That
Something that
okay,
sticks out like,
we'll rush these samples, no problem. So and that's what we did actually with the lithium was, and of course lithium is a totally different procedure, and we did it at a different lab, but we rushed those samples, and yeah, and got the news out rather quickly that this thing is now. And getting back to the lithium, Allan, we were out. Steve was down last week, Steve Stairs, and had a couple of geologists out doing some detailed mapping. We're also doing, by the way, just finished a drone-based LiDAR survey and aerial photography, because this stuff is like a baby's bottom. There's no bush, so anything sticking up out of the ground, you'll see it. And these things are very distinctive. They're very white weathering. So and when you're down to like centimeter scale with the quality of the photographs, we should be able to map potential boulders or outcrops and this thing is now 2.2 kilometers long, 1.2 kilometers wide, apparently, and we're still finding dikes. We still got to ask, we don't know how big this is. It's embarrassing.
good,
In a good way.
embarrassing.
In a good way.
Well, I think that people earlier in the conversation, I said that you're one of my favorite guys to talk to because you just love this stuff so much, and you're just a down to earth geologist that, doesn't want to confuse everybody with your work. And you do a fantastic job, Tim. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff.
All right. Well, Allan, anytime. Thank you. And
Okay.
yeah,
Before I let you go, though, so let's round it back to Moosehead. You're drilling from the barge now. You've got some holes that are either being logged or in the lab. So there's pending drill holes, and you're drilling now as well. Is that the case?
all of the above, yes.
Okay. So the news flow from Moosehead looks good for next few months.
Yep.
Secondly, you also mentioned that the ice didn't cooperate. If you get another season like winter like that, is there possibility to keep that barge there longer?
Well, they want to take it out in case there are, and they want to get the drill off it for one thing too, to service it. But no, that once, and we won't pull it out at the first sign of ice around the edges of the pond. But the minute that the ice becomes a hindrance to getting, because you still have to get a boat, just a 2-minute boat ride out to it, if it becomes a danger, always safety first. We're going to pull the thing out probably in another few weeks, as long as we can, and get the drill off and wait for winter to come. And then as soon as the ice is gone in the spring, slide her back out again.
And plus now you've, with the 15, 20 drill holes you got from this barge, you're able to target things better when you do have to drill from the side or following it along strike. Is that correct?
Yeah, what we're going to do, we're going to drill several levels of holes because there are limitations with respect to the dip and the angle that you can tilt the head and stuff, because of course you're drilling through the floor of a floating structure. You have to be mindful of cross beams and things like that. So we're kind of restricted in the angles we can drill for now. But besides that, the vertical height that we're not getting because of this pond will require us to drill a fence of holes right now, like we're doing the shallowest, anywhere from 30 to 50 meters down. We're going to move the barge back to the east and drill another series of holes down at the 75 to 100 meters sort of intersection point, and basically go the length of the structure. So there's a there's a lot of drilling left to be done from the barge, and it'll be busy pretty well all of next year, I would think.
Well, and my big hope is that this is unlocking the depth story and how to get at it, because I think we could have a lot of jewelry boxes down there, Tim. Well,
the gold came from somewhere. Right, it had to come from below. So let's get down to the source of it, hopefully.
But the big point is you're doing it intelligently. You're not just wildcat drilling deep, expensive holes to appease some people that are complaining. You're doing it in a structured fashion that is needed to find these needles in the haystack.
Well, like the old saying, slow and steady wins the race, and I guess to use a local word, tortuga, is it?
What does that mean?
Turtle. Is that turtle in Spanish?
Oh, yes, sí, yes, exactamundo.
So, cerveza, por favor. Anyway. That's my Spanish. Sorry, that's my Spanish. I've never worked in a Spanish-speaking country, so I haven't experienced it. But anyway, maybe one day.
Well, Tim, again, you've been really generous with your time. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff because you guys got a lot of good stuff on the go. It's not just Moosehead, it's this fleur-de-lis, it's the other one, it's the lithium. You guys are doing a lot of great work. We're going to have lots to talk about in the future. Anytime you want to come on, my door is open for you, Tim.
Well, one last comment I should make as well, in case people were wondering, well, how are we going to do all this? We have $12 million cash in the bank as of today. 12. I was shocked to find that out myself a bit, embarrassingly. I knew we had exercised a lot of warrants over the past 6 months. I didn't realize just how many. Over $7 million in warrants.
Remember when we did a conference about 6 months ago, Tim, you were talking about, well, I hope we get over 25 cents because we got a lot of warrants, and you guys popped up, those warrants get exercised, great on you. So you're able to replenish with some of your in the money warrants.
Yep, for sure. No, most of them were, in fact. So I think some of them may still be in the, a small number may still be in the money, but now we're chasing the higher price one. So that's our next goal, is to take them down too.
I like the sounds of that, Tim. Let me close it off and we can have a quick chat at the end there. So there you go, folks. They're in Newfoundland, smart geologists, smart prospectors doing lots of good work. They got a potential company maker at Moosehead, but they're scratching the surface elsewhere, looking for things that could pop up. And they've got a lot of potential on the other stuff outside of Moosehead, but Moosehead is tremendously exciting. Newfoundland is getting a lot of attention. Sokoman still has a, relative to their peers of what they're looking for, they still have a very modest valuation. And as I always say, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to do your homework. I encourage people to do their homework because that makes them smarter investors. That gives them a better chance to make money in this business. Do your homework on Sokoman. They do a great job writing their news releases. They include a lot of really important pictures to look at. Check out their presentations. Check out their entire website. There's a lot to learn about this company. I'm proud to have them as a sponsor of my website, but I wouldn't have them as a sponsor of my website unless they did this kind of work. So do your homework, look for more news releases. They got plenty of catalysts, lots of money in the bank, lots of great stuff to work on. There you go. Have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.